After a mixed bag of a first half for the Cardinals, does anybody on the roster deserve an A for their midterm grade? Or on the other end of the spectrum, do we have any Fs? What's going on, everyone, and welcome into this edition of the Daily Cardinals podcast, b-schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer here with you. It is Tuesday evening, July 16th, 2024. Tonight, we had the All-Star game across Major League Baseball. The AL won it again, as they usually seem to, but tonight we want to focus a little more on Cardinals talk, as we're going to dole out first-half player grades, understanding entirely that it's not really the halfway point. In fact, the Cardinals are closer to 100 games played in 2024 than they are 81 games played, which would be the actual halfway point. But since there's really no better way to phrase it, that's what we're going to call it, is the midterm grades here for the Cardinals as we go through the roster. 50 wins, 46 losses for St. Louis. They are in a wild card spot as we sit here during the All-Star break. And although there were a couple of interesting nuggets from the All-Star game on Tuesday night, your responses to the last video talking about Ryan Helsley opting out of the game, essentially, to where the Cardinals ended up with no representatives, a lot of folks told me, yeah, don't really care about the All-Star game, not really going to be watching it. So we're not going to spend too much time on it. We're going to spend the majority of our time on Cardinals talk today. Shohei Ohtani homers, that was kind of cool. I thought the matchup between Mason Miller and Ohtani was kind of fun. Miller struck him out. You had Jarren Duran hit a bomb that ended up sealing the deal for the AL. But basically, in this day and age of the All-Star game, it's kind of difficult to have the excitement in innings 1 through 9 because the pitching is just that much better than the hitters. The pitching is just so good across Major League Baseball. So you had a couple of moments in the All-Star game, but not a ton to write home about outside of a couple of home runs and a bunch of strikeouts. So let me know your impressions of the All-Star game in the comments if you want, but mostly we'll be talking Cardinals tonight. I want your interpretation of where these player grades should fall. How many A's should I be giving out tonight? How many F's on the other end of the spectrum for the Cardinals so far this season? I'll grade the players, and I think at the end maybe I'll do one for Ollie Marmol, one for John Mozeliak, as we look ahead to a very important period of time for the president of baseball operations, as Mo is going to have to figure out what to do at this trade deadline to potentially add to this Cardinals club. They come out of the break facing the Atlanta Braves, which is going to be a huge series with wild card implications, as the Cardinals are trailing the Braves by 3.5 games right now for the top spot in the National League wild card picture, which does matter relative to the number 2 spot because it's the difference between hosting the wild card series and playing that series on the road. And this weekend in Atlanta could be a preview of that wild card series matchup if the Cardinals and Braves remain where they currently are in those standings. But that's still a long way away, a lot yet to be determined through the remainder of this MLB season. And we'll be covering it from a Cardinals perspective all the way through the end and into the offseason is where we really will do some of our best work, I suspect, with trade rumors, free agent signings, rumors about free agent signings, and more. I'm sure it's going to be a fun time on b-schaeff Daily in the offseason, too. So hit that subscribe button on YouTube if you're watching over there. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or one of our other podcast apps, make sure you follow along on your preferred avenue of listening. And one thing that's new that could be fun for Spotify listeners is you can actually leave comments now on the episodes on Spotify. I'm not sure if that's something you could do before, but they just went through a pretty big revamp, and that's something afforded to you now. And, of course, on YouTube, lots of comments every day as Cardinals fans get their thoughts in. So join the ranks and check out the Discord if you're interested in a community of Cardinals fans chatting about the club throughout the days and throughout the games. The link to the new Discord is in the description to the video, as is the link to join the channel membership here on YouTube. But without further ado, I'm just going to jump right into the Cardinals roster, take a look at some of the stats. We'll go position by position, player by player. We'll start with the position players, I think, and then we'll get into the pitching staff, starting rotation, and bullpen. And anybody that's participated for the Cardinals, I will briefly talk about them this year and dole out a grade. We'll try to move quickly because we don't want this episode to linger incredibly late simply because we're really just talking about stuff that's already happened. But I'll give you my perspective on what some of these guys have done, and I'll also kind of tell you if I think somebody could be trending in a better or maybe a worse direction in the second half, depending on what we're seeing from them currently. I've got Baseball Reference pulled up. I'm just going to go right down the list, and there is no rhyme or reason to the order here. I'm basically just going to use what Baseball Reference has got for me. Or actually, let's do it in a more reasonable way. We'll go by plate appearances. So we'll go from the most plate appearances to the fewest, and then we'll do the same thing as far as innings for the bullpen guys. All right, let's start at the very top. And Paul Goldschmidt has taken more plate appearances than any Cardinal this year, but he has not been the most effective Cardinal by any means. 404 plate appearances so far this season. It's an 87 OPS plus for Goldie. Yeah, this has not been the season that Paul Goldschmidt had hoped that it would be coming in. A 664 OPS. That ranks 10th on the Cardinals this season, ahead of guys like Pedro Pajes and Michael Ciani, but behind guys like Matt Carpenter, Nolan Gorman, who's been disappointing, Arenado, who's been disappointing. 10th is Goldie in OPS on this club. He's hit a few home runs. The 13 home runs ranks third on the Cardinals. He's racked up 37 RBIs despite being one of the worst producers with runners in scoring position in MLB this season. He's hitting sub 200 by a pretty good clip in that category. It's been a rough go, and the Cardinals have continued to insist on having him as a middle-of-the-order presence despite not putting up middle-of-the-order numbers. And in particular, it's frustrating because of the RISP issues that he's had. So for me, it's hard to give Paul Goldschmidt a straight-up F, but he's been about as, if not for the 13 homers, I would go straight-up F. I'm going to go D-, though, simply because there are some intangible things he brings to the table, and he does have 13 homers. If he was sitting at an Arenado-like home run total right now with the OPS that he has, because Arenado's got 8 homers, but has at least a little bit better in terms of he's hitting 270 compared to Goldie's batting average of 230, and Arenado's getting on base a little bit more often, slugging a little bit more despite having fewer homers. So I'm going to be a little more favorable, I think, when we get to Nolan. But for Goldie, it's D- at this point. And if it ends the season this way, I think I go a full-fledged F if he doesn't improve the numbers, because the Cardinals just simply need more from him. There's not a lot else to say about it. They have to have more from him. Right now, it's definitely trending in the direction that this will be the final season for Paul Goldschmidt with the Cardinals. I just can't imagine them bringing him back if these are his final season numbers. And that's not something I would have fathomed saying at the beginning of the season. Remember, in spring, we were talking about, will they go for an extension now like they tend to do with veteran players that they appreciate and like and want to have around for the future? Or is it something that'll wait maybe into the season as long as he kind of comes out and looks okay, they'll get something done early in the year? Or is it something that they're going to let play out the full season? And really, there was no world in which it felt like the Cardinals were going to get burned by waiting. You know, you remember back to the Matt Carpenter extension several years ago that was premature. It wasn't needed at the time. It was like, what are you going to do? Wait till Matt Carpenter goes to free agency and feel like you have to outbid all these teams, even if he was staying at an MVP candidate level, which Carpenter was for about 3 months at one point in time, 2.5 months. But it just was not something that was sustained. And they were never going to have to bid what they ended up paying Matt Carpenter on that contract. It was just a courtesy deal. And the Cardinals maybe learned a lesson from that and didn't pay the courtesy deal to Paul Goldschmidt. And now it's difficult to imagine he's going to be a Cardinal next year. With guys like Alec Burleson could move to first base. You could see Wilson Contreras / Ivan Herrera get more time at first base to try and find ways to get both of them into the lineup at once. So, Brendan Donovan could play first base if you had other options in the outfield. It's a D- for Goldie, but like I said, it's almost a courtesy for me to not say a failing grade, because he has been a massive, massive disappointment for what the Cardinals need from that spot. Next up on the plate appearance list is Brendan Donovan with 397 plate appearances. He's going to get a much more favorable grade. Has played some really good left field defense. Basically has been the Cardinals' primary left fielder, other than a few spots here and there where he has moved around the diamond. But he's been a darn good left fielder out there. The plays that he makes up against the wall, I've been very impressed by his ability to track those balls. The leap, the way he times the leap, it doesn't always look particularly graceful, but it's effective. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's talked about kind of what's going through his mind as he's feeling for the wall back there and understanding that just to make sure he's in the right spot, he wants to have the leap timed up to where, he's able to make sure he's clear of the wall and going to be able to get a read on the baseball. So he's done it very well defensively, in my opinion. Offensively, he's got an OPS of 756. That's an OPS plus of 114, which means he's been 14% above league average. For Brendan Donovan, that is the third best OPS and OPS plus on the Cardinals at this point in the season. He's done a very good job. 8 home runs. He could very well end the season with 13 to 15 homers. Doesn't strike out a ton. He's only struck out 53 times this season, and that's pacing for fewer than 100 strikeouts, which is for the amount of games that he plays. I mean, to be the second plate appearance leader on the team and then be 7th in the team in strikeouts. Brendan Donovan has done a lot of things really well for the Cardinals. I'm inclined to go with I think a flat B, maybe even a B plus would be merited here for Donovan. There's not a whole lot else I would say you need to see from him. So yeah, I am going to go B plus. It's just that career-wise, in terms of his OPS, I think he's a little bit below the career, about 770 OPS. He's at 756. So, offensively, I think there could be a little bit more in the tank there. But the fact that he's been a legitimate RBI producer as well has come by a little bit of a, maybe not a surprise, but we maybe had him penciled in to be in the leadoff man. And he's done that for a spell, but has also been a guy batting around number 5, number 6, has been sort of a middle-of-the-order run producer, and he has thrived in that role. He's 3rd on the team in RBIs and has done a really nice job. Batting 276, he's on base near 350, slugging over 400. I've got a lot of good things to say about Brendan Donovan, and as I mentioned when we talked J.J. Weatherhold a couple of days ago, the new Cardinals draft pick, I said if you want to compare him to Brendan Donovan, I mean that in a favorable way to Weatherhold, because if you gave me 9 Brendan Donovans, I'll take that against whatever team you want to try to compile, and I feel like I'm going to win a pretty good amount of the time. So Donovan, for me, I have talked myself into a B+, because even though the numbers are not overwhelmingly incredible offensively, just really, really solid across the board from Donovan, and I do think that's another guy that could be trending in a more positive way. If you asked me 756 over-under for his OPS to end the season, I'd probably take the over on that. Arenado is next, 379 plate appearances, 3rd most on the team. OPS of 704 is down at 7th most on the team. He's a 99 OPS plus, so slightly below league average, and that's a monumental disappointment. It's not quite to the level of Paul Goldschmidt. I'm probably going to give Arenado a flat D at this point, and even that feels a little bit rough, but the Cardinals do need more power production from him in this, so that's why I am going to be as harsh as I've been. And the defense has been kind of spotty at times for Arenado. I think he's settled it into this point where we're seeing more recently the version of him that we expect to see. But if you look up and down his career, at least since joining the Cardinals, 2021, his OPS plus was 119. It's 19% above league average. Had the MVP caliber season in 22 when Goldie just beat him out for the award, and he finished 3rd. 151 was the OPS plus. He was 51% better than league average at his position that year. And then last season, it wasn't a great year for Arenado. He was still a 108 OPS plus, above league average. This year, he's a 99, which means he's 1% below league average. He's got an OPS of 704. I do believe I end up moving Arenado up by the end of the season because I think his performance is going to continue to trend a little bit better. But a 270 average, it's hard to give a guy a D. I think I am going to be a little softer on this. And let me know if you think I'm being too soft, or maybe you still think I'm being too harsh because the guy's hitting 270 and it has at least got the OPS above 704. I might be inclined to go D+. It's between D and D+ for me. The 8 home runs is what's glaring. It's a difficult thing to sit here and say, oh, this guy should be, he should have to hit a bunch of home runs. That should be a necessity for this baseball player. But that's the role that he was destined to fill on this Cardinals team. Previous to this season with St. Louis, 34 homers, 30, and even 26 last year with 93 RBIs. He's got 8 homers and only 40 runs batted in this season in 90 games. I mean, he's pacing for about maybe 70 to 75 RBIs. That's not really what you were envisioning with Nolan Arenado to begin the season. So when you factor in the fact that there was some defensive issues, I think he's kind of turned that around. It's between D and D+ for me, but let me know in the comments below what you think about Arenado. It's worse for Goldschmidt. I'm still going to maintain that. When you look at OPS, he's about 40 points lower than Arenado is, 704 to 664. But there's still a lot more that should hopefully be in the tank for Arenado from a power perspective. And if it's not, I mean, if he ends the season with 13 home runs and 68 RBIs, we're going to be, you just can't consider that anything other than a D or below. So that's about where I'm sitting right now for Arenado. Mason Wynn, 351 on the plate appearances chart. If you would have told me coming in, Mason Wynn's going to get to play enough shortstop that he's going to be in the top 5 in plate appearances, he's going to be the primary guy there, that would have been encouraging. Offensive numbers have tailed off a bit of late, but he's still hitting 284 for the season, on base at 332, slugging over 400, which is remarkable. The fact that he's outslugging Arenado and almost at the Brendan Donovan level of 411. He's slugging 406. I mean, that's behind Contreras and Burleson, as well as Nolan Gorman, but only 7 points below Gorman. He's just been such a complete hitter, has Mason Wynn. And when you factor in the defense and fulfilling that leadoff role as a rookie, I'm inclined to give Mason Wynn like an A, maybe A minus, just because we're looking at a 739 OPS, so it's just maybe a little bit below what you're hoping to try to maybe push him to 750. But I think when we came into the year, we basically said if he could be a 700 OPS, if he could be kind of a Tommy Edman career hitter type and play really good shortstop defense, you'd take that. So I really think it is incumbent upon me to just go ahead and give him the A, and that's what I'm going to do. A for Mason Wynn. I'm not guaranteeing it'll be an A by the end of the season if the OPS kind of continues to trickle back towards 700, but it's inarguable. He's done a fantastic job and is going to continue to get more and more comfortable as time goes along. 18 doubles for Wynn is second on the team. 5 homers. He'll probably get to 8 or 10 home runs, and I think as he settles into his career, it could be more of a 10 to 12 to 15 home run guy per season. Mason Wynn's done a fantastic job. I don't really have anything negative to say there. Nolan Gorman's an interesting case. 344 plate appearances. Next on our list, he's hitting 206. His on base is sub 300 at 279. He's slugging over 400 still, but just barely at 413. That's an OPS of 692. For him to be at 17 home runs, tied for the league lead, or not the league lead, but the team lead going into the break, and to be as low as he is in OPS, down at 8th on the team, you want to see more consistency from Gorman. And the fact that they haven't seen it from him, he's pacing close to 30 home runs, so I can't go too crazy with this grade. But I am kind of inclined to go D+, because I think even the overall numbers don't show as bad as he's been at times. He's hit a bunch of homers. At times I've accused that of being empty calories. He's had some good clutch moments that aren't related to the long ball, and he is second on the team in RBIs, so that's still something. 47 ribbies, and the slug is acceptable. But a 93 OPS plus, 7% below league average, while hitting that many home runs, it just tells you that there are long stretches of time that are not very productive for Nolan Gorman. And if you've been watching the Cardinals season, you vibe with that and you understand that is accurate. I'm going to go D+, but I certainly think by season's end, just get the OPS up even just above 700, 710, and I'll be inclined to go C- or C. But also what bakes into this not being a C- grade, at least, is defensively, I've been a little disappointed actually recently with Gorman from a range perspective. It looks like he's just got sometimes like a Tin Man from Wizard of Oz hinge in his hip where he bends down to try to keep these balls in front, and he has been missing on that at a pretty alarming rate. I'm not saying every ball should be kept in front, but it seems like there's either not a willingness to dive or not an understanding of like the way to do so gracefully at times. And it's just been within the past few weeks. I don't think that's been a season-long thing, but I have certainly noticed his range and some of the balls that I off the bat, and especially notice it when I'm at the ballpark high up in the press box. There was a game last week where there was a couple in a row where I was like, man, I don't know how he doesn't keep that in front of him. So D+ for me for Nolan Gorman. That feels like nasty work to say D+ for a guy that's tied for the team lead in home runs, but I do think there is an expectation for the Cardinals to really be the offense that they want to be and that they're designed to be. Gorman's got to do more than just hit the home runs occasionally. He's up to 129 strikeouts. He's hitting 206. When you can really think back and remember the long swaths of time where he has struggled mightily and has been a black hole in that lineup, and with a little bit of the criticism I think that I'm offering on the defense, I want to say D+ is probably fair. And like if you're talking about the Cardinals not being better than they are, still 4 games above 500, but I just gave D-, D, and D+ to the 3 hitters that I would have said are going to be their 3 most productive guys to begin the year: Goldie, Arenado, and Gorman. So to have that be the fact and not necessarily be in dire straits with the team in terms of the record and the way they're playing is notable, but it's also notable in the reverse because you can say, all right, go have those guys have better second halves, and this Cardinals team is probably right where they want to be by the end of 162, which could be an encouraging thing. But if you don't believe that you're going to get that type of production switch from these guys all of a sudden, then maybe you're not as encouraged. Moving right along to Alec Burleson, and boy, has he ever raised his grade recently. 340 plate appearances. He has been on a heater, has an OPS over 800, the only non-Wilson Contreras player to be able to say that on the Cardinals this year. It's an A for Burleson, and I'm inclined to maybe just go A+. He's been incredible. And relative to expectation is always how I'm going to bake this in. We were talking about Alec Burleson in spring as a guy that really didn't have an obvious spot on the bench. Like we thought he'd be in Memphis once they signed Brandon Crawford. Then Edman doesn't come back. Carlson gets banged at the very end of the spring with the collision with him and Jordan Walker out there. And suddenly it's a completely different situation. than we thought we were going to see, where Alec Burleson's playing. He's on the bench, there's no doubt. Now he's kind of playing regularly, and now he's bat number 2. Yeah, he's an A+, man. Even defensively, I think he's done a nice enough job. OPS plus of 126, 26% above league average, 814 OPS, hitting 288, hitting for average and for power, and not striking out. He's only got 46 strikeouts, which is 8th on the team. And granted, he's only about, 6th on the team in plate appearances, but this is a dude that makes contact. He doesn't strike out, and he's been a little more selective because he knows he's a great contact talent, but his ability to be more selective, and that's come from conversations with the coaching staff, and Matt Carpenter is another guy that was credited with having a conversation with Burley where he said, man, your talent is there. You need to be a little more selective and only be swinging at pitches that you're able to drive and do damage on. And Burleson, something clicked for him midway through this the portion of the season that's already been played, and he has really turned it on recently. Tied for the team lead in homers, 17. He leads the Cardinals in RBIs, 53. He's even 7 for 9 on stolen base attempts. This dude's going to steal 12 bags this year and have that as a part of his game where he's been successful. And the Cardinals as a whole have done this. Guys like Gorman are 6 for 7. They've done a nice job of sort of the nondescript guys that you wouldn't think about as base stealers taking advantage of the chances and having some pretty good success in the rate that they've done that. Even Ivan Herrera is 4 for 4. Newt Bar only 3 for 3. I'd like to see Newt get going a little bit more, but he's kind of a danger to himself sometimes with the injuries that he's undertaken. So anyway, Alec Burleson's A+. I'm going to give him the highest grade of any position player on the Cardinals. And the numbers, I think, bear that out, honestly. Now we'll go to Wilson Contreras, though. Does he also get an A+? 917 OPS, significant improvement in terms of what he's done behind the plate. He's on a pace for probably 25 to 30 home runs. He's got 10 homers in 216 plate appearances. Has unfortunately only played in 51 games. But man, that's not his fault. The fact that he got, I guess you could say his fault because he started setting up a lot closer to the plate, put himself in a dangerous spot. JD Martinez whacked him, but that was to improve pitch framing, and it's something that the Cardinals were on board with him doing. I'm not going to knock Wilson for that, and I also think he's the heart and soul of this team. A+. I don't even care if you call it homer. I'm a big Wilson Contreras guy. I was last year when it was maybe not as popular to be. I thought that there was some things going on that, he got the raw end of the deal on, and it wasn't long within last season until I think Cardinals fans realized that too, and the stories kind of started to come out. But Wilson Contreras, for me, a 917 OPS, man, he's 100 points higher than Burleson. To say he's anything other than an A+, I think would be wrong. So I'm going to give him an A+ as well. Michael Ciani is next up in plate appearances. The fact that he's got more plate appearances than Newt Bar and Dylan Carlson, as well as Jordan Walker and Victor Scott from this outfield mix. He's earned everything he's gotten. Michael Ciani's OPS is not strong. 568, which is 12th on the team. It's behind Pages, barely ahead of Brandon Crawford. 61 OPS plus means he's been 39% below league average this year offensively. But Ciani's come up with a few clutch moments. He's hitting 227. I want to see Ciani's on base close to 300. I want to see his slug, a little bit above 300 if you can. He's slugging right now 304. I think if he could slug 325 even and on base 300, he's an everyday player at this level. That's a 625 OPS, but it's a credit to his incredible defense. I think he's the best center fielder in baseball. So all that being said, I'm gonna give Ciani a more favorable grade than a lot of people maybe think I should. 10 stolen bases. Let me know in the comments especially. I want to know what people grade a lot of the Cardinals, but Ciani is one that could be more polarizing because you look at the offensive numbers and you go, okay, there's not really a lot there. Where do you put Michael Ciani, Cardinals fans? Because I'm going to give him a lot of credit for stabilizing center field. It was what Tommy Edman was supposed to do, and he's not been healthy. They tried Victor Scott. He couldn't even do what Ciani is doing offensively. Victor was hitting 085, right? Like a sub 100. They just, and even now in AAA, he's got a Ciani-esque OPS at AAA. So for Ciani to go from a guy that I thought year ago at this time, well, not a year ago, but late August, September when they had picked him up, I thought this guy, you could probably dump him in the offseason if you needed a 40-man spot. And that was my own, misunderstanding of what this guy could do. And so I'm not saying that's what people should have considered Ciani to be. I'm not the arbiter of being correct on that. I was just wrong. And I don't know if the Cardinals really fully understood. They saw the defense. They saw the glimpses of it. But for him to turn from a guy who, yeah, we've seen the glimpses of his defense to holy crap, this guy just goes out and gets it every single day. It's impressive. I'm going to give Michael Ciani a straight B. It's hard to go much higher than that with the offense, but I'm going to even maybe a B plus. If we're going to really say relative to expectations, and my expectations were nil for Michael Ciani, and he's holding his own. 568 OPS is not, I don't think, enough to make him an everyday guy. If they had better options, if they had a healthy Edman that could be competing, if they had Carlson performing better, but for him to be out OPSing Dylan Carlson at this point, yeah, I've talked myself into it. I am that high on Ciani's defense, and I'm going to give him a B plus. Again, I do grade on a curve a little bit, and I didn't expect anything from him, and so the defense he's provided, it's enough for me to give him a B plus because he's. Look, you say, well, he's an automatic out. He doesn't get any hits. Well, he's hitting 227. Lars Nootbaar's hitting 229. Goldie's hitting 230. And same batting average as Paul Goldschmidt. He doesn't have any power, but Ciani's done a lot of things really well. B plus. I've talked myself into it. All right, we'll try to rapid fire through the rest of these position players because not a lot of guys have seen as much playing time. Lars Nootbaar is next, though. 712 OPS. A little below what I would want to see from him. I want to see 750, 60, 70, 780. Try to push toward 800 if you're really going to be for real. But the injuries it's frustrating that he's had some injuries. There's not a lot you can do about it, but they have started to mount on him a little bit. I'm going to go C- for Lars Nootbaar. I think it would be a little harsh to put him in the D range, but he needs to stay on the field for the rest of the season. If he has another IL stint, it's going to be pretty difficult for him to get a favorable grade at the end of the year, barring just going gangbusters offensively. He's C- for me right now. Ivan Herrera actually out OPSing Nootbaar 718 to 712. We've seen the bat. It plays at this level. Not a lot of power, though. I mean, 192 plate appearances, only 3 home runs. You could triple that and basically have a full season's worth. He's played 54 games. So 9 or 10 homers, I don't know. 718 OPS is suitable. He's hitting 279. I think more power would come if he had regular playing time. He's obviously in Memphis right now. The throwing situation, though, is a reason that I'm just going to have to kind of couch him around a C- as well. It's the reason he's not here. I got to be honest. Like people that didn't understand, well, why is Pages here instead of Herrera? He's not doing the job defensively, and he's done a lot of things really well defensively behind the plate. The one thing that he has not done well is throwing out base runners, managing the running game. He's thrown out 3 guys successfully, and 41 have stolen against him. He's 3 for 44. It's like a 6 or 7% success rate. It's only worse than, or I should say only better than Martin Maldonado, I think, as of last check, of guys who have played a lot of catcher. And the thing is, Ivan Herrera's not played a lot of catcher. That's how often guys have been running on him, is like they realized it's a turnstile. So because of that, I got to go C-. If he could figure out that throwing arm thing, I think he would be a very, very good big league catcher because the more he hits, the more he's going to get a feel for hitting at the big league level. And even without everyday opportunity, he's still hitting 279. A little more power to come, but on base of 340, like the bat plays for Ivan Herrera. C- though, because he's being kept off this roster right now by his throwing arm. He's got to address that if he's going to stick at catcher because you can't put him back there. It's that big of a deal because once teams realize, and you might say, well, it's just a few base runners now and then, what's the big deal? If he's good at framing, if he's good at calling the game for the pitching staff, why does it matter? It matters because it was becoming a mockery in the way that teams would run against him. You're talking 4 or 5 times a game. If they had a guy on first base, they were running on Ivan Herrera. And that is not tenable for a pitching staff. Your catcher back there needs to be able to support the pitchers, not be a reason that suddenly they're pitching with runners in scoring position all the time because they happen to walk a guy. It just wasn't tenable. So C-. I really like the bat. We'll see if he's still on the Cardinals in a couple of weeks, though. I mean, if you're talking about needing to make a trade and not wanting to give up big prospects, Herrera's got probably some trade value, and we'll see if they end up going in that direction because of what they think of Pedro Pages. We'll see. All right, motoring on to sort of the bench players. Dylan Carlson started the year injured, 533 OPS, and has had some moments where he's really looked rough defensively. It's a D or a D- from Dylan. He's had a couple of nice moments. The big throw that he had won him a game. I'm going to call it D instead of D- simply because of that one throw. But the numbers offensively have been rough. There have been some rough moments in the field. I used to think he was a pretty viable center fielder. It's confidence, though, because there are games where we see him play and handle and manage that role very well, like he knows what he's doing, and there are games where he just looks lost. So it's a D for me for Dylan. We'll see if he's somebody on the trade block. I don't know if he has trade value, but if Tommy comes back, it's kind of hard to envision there being a big-time role for Dylan when he doesn't really have a role right now. It's disappointing because there was a ton of prospect pedigree from him back a few years ago. He just has not put it together, and I'm not sure at this point he's going to do it here. I do predict he'll be one of those guys OPS in 730, 740, 720 with another team if he's playing, an everyday role. I think he's going to end up being that kind of guy. He has not been that this year for the Cardinals. Matt Carpenter, 665 OPS in a part-time role. Yeah, C-. It's about what you thought it would be probably. Maybe a little above, a little below. I don't know. It depends on your expectations. But he whispered something into Burleson's ear about swinging at the right selectiveness of pitches, and that's turned him into a stud. So I can't give him a non-passing grade. C- for Carp. Pages, man, I'm gonna go B or B plus, kind of like the Ciani from behind the plate, same concept, but actually a little bit of a higher OPS. So I'm gonna go with a B plus for Pages because the role that he's destined to fill is backup catcher, and your offense doesn't matter all that much in that role. Simply because we've seen it over the years with the Cardinals when they had Yadier Molina as the catcher. They needed a backup that they knew could basically step in without missing a beat in the way that he handled the pitching staff, and that was what they always prioritized. And you're seeing him do it right now by keeping Pages on the roster with Herrera currently down in AAA. So I think that speaks volumes into how the Cardinals are viewing him. And if you look at a couple of these fun clutch stats, with 2 outs and runners in scoring position, he's hitting .417 with a .917 OPS. He's 5 for 12 in those spots. Late and close, I don't know if that's within 1 run, 2 runs, whatever late and close is defined as. He's had a few big swings in those moments. 3 for 9 with 3 RBIs and a home run. OPS over 1,100 in those spots. So he's been kind of clutch. He hasn't been overall just a great hitter for this Cardinals team. High leverage. They split it between your at-bats that you take with high, medium, and low leverage. In low leverage, he's a 576 OPS. Medium leverage, however it's defined, I'm not going to spend time looking it up right now. It's based on win probability added and stuff like that. 475 in medium leverage. In high leverage, he's 5 for 16, which is a 313 batting average, 1 homer, 8 RBIs, 919 OPS. B plus from Pages because although the overall numbers offensively are kind of meh, he's been unbelievably clutch, and that's kind of cool. So yeah, B plus. I mean, maybe even an A minus when you consider how darn clutch he's been. Brandon Crawford, it's a D for Brandon Crawford, maybe even a D minus. He's been a little better of late after a really putrid start, but it's just there's a frustration factor with the limiting nature of his presence on the roster. He's just the backup shortstop. I know they've put him at third a few times, but the bat hasn't really played. He's hitting 161. So I'll go D minus. There are going to be some failing grades, I'm sure, from the comments here, but I'm going to be a little bit reasonable because I think it's been a tough ask of Brandon Crawford, and he's been able to fill the shortstop spot and give Mason Wynn some days off. I'm not saying he's been able to fill it well, that he's a great defensive shortstop at this point, but he's a body out there. D minus. It's been disappointing. I won't lie. Jordan Walker, man. It's bad, man. It's probably an F. Maybe D minus if I'm going to be a little bit forgiving because he only took 67 plate appearances with the Cardinals before being sent down. I'm going to go D minus rather than an F for Jordan Walker because I think the Cardinals are contributing in part to the mental anguish that's going on for Jordan Walker. Like, just kind of find a way to get the kid to do his thing and play his game, and he's going to be just fine. But it's been disappointing so far. There's no doubt about that. Victor Scott, D. Probably D minus actually because I thought his Memphis numbers would be better, but he was a non-factor offensively and they had to send him down. It was exciting to see him get a shot, but it just was not happening for him. The defense though, I think he's going to be just fine, but it's a D minus because I did have expectations for Scott at minimum to thrive in the minors and he hasn't really done that yet. Jose Fermin, man, I got to go. It's not fair to him, but like he's F or a D minus. He's hitting 130 with the Cardinals when he's played, while then going to Memphis and just absolutely being Babe Ruth. That's frustrating. So D- because I'm not going to give a guy an F that's only taken 30 some odd plate appearances or whatever it's been, 51. And you'll say, oh, he's being a homer, he's being too nice, but whatever. That's where I'm at on the position players. And that's everybody on Baseball Reference. So if I missed anybody, then the reason I missed them is because they're not listed. But let's go ahead and go to the starters. We're 35 minutes into this thing. I want to make sure to kind of get through the pitching staff as well as we wrap this thing up. Rolling through the rotation in terms of the most starts to the fewest, Michaelis has a 5.13 ERA. There have been some good stretches for him, but too many just absolute pitfalls. He's started the most games and thrown the most innings, but they haven't always been quality innings from him. It's a D for Michaelis from me at this point. There's been enough of those quality-esque starts that like the percentage of quality starts is higher than you might think for a guy with a 5.13 ERA, but not too many dominant ones. It's a D. I'm going to give Michaelis a D. Lance Lynn, 4.39 ERA, has been maybe about what a lot of us thought he would be, but I thought he'd actually be a little better than he's been, especially when you count some of the unearned runs that he was charged with via error on his own. Like he had an error that contributed to a big inning and kind of tanked one of his starts. 92 Ks in 96 innings is about where I thought he'd be. I'm going to give him a C, not even a C minus, just a flat C for Lance Lynn. Hoped it would be a little bit better, though. I got to be honest. And maybe it will be in the second half. Who knows? Kyle Gibson recently has had a downturn, but for 4.16 ERA and to know how really sturdy he was for the longest time and to have 96 Ks in 101 innings, which I didn't. I mean, he's on pace to get that 180-ish innings mark and be an innings eater a little bit more so than Lance Lynn, and that's with one fewer start. He's got 5 more innings than Lynn. So for me, it's a B from Kyle Gibson right now. I'd have been even higher than that if not for the recent downturn. He's got a 100 ERA plus, so that's league average. Lynn's been a little below league average. I'll give Kyle Gibson. Gibby's going to get a B from me. Sonny Gray, 3.34 ERA. It's been a little bit of a funky year for him. Started on the IL, came back, still in only 17 starts, has thrown more innings than Lance Lynn. And so he's had a lot of those games where he has thrown 7. And I didn't really think of him as an innings eater coming into the year necessarily. 121 Ks in 99 innings. He's been very dominant at times, but has also kind of gotten touched up at times. 3.34 ERA. Sonny Gray, all things considered, I'm going to go B plus. Probably both. You know what? Honestly, Gibson and Gray probably both deserve B pluses for different reasons from me, and I might be inclined to give it to both of them. Palante's got a 4.21 ERA. He's made the 5th most starts on the Cardinals this season, has surpassed Matz, who's been on the IL, and Libby, who was in there in that rotation for a little while, and has also made some spot starts here and there. 4.21 ERA, though, is a leagues better than it was when they sent him down early in April when he had a 6-some-odd ERA, and he's filled the number 5 spot pretty much as you could have hoped for him to. So that's another guy that I'm honestly going BB plus. And you might think I'm giving out a lot of those, but we do have to remember the Cardinals aren't last year's Cardinals. They're not losing 91 games. They're 50 and 46. They're above 500. They're in a playoff spot. It's guys like Palante that you're able to say that because he's held serve in the role that he's been asked to fill. So I'm going to go B plus for Palante as well. Strictly because of what he's done in the rotation. You know, the bullpen stuff was bad at the beginning of the year, but it's also not a good role for him, I don't think. I think he's suited better to start. Steven Matz is a 6.18 ERA, and he's been on the IL for a while. It's just a flat failure for Steven Matz. There's room to improve it if he comes back healthy, but I don't think the Cardinals can realistically count on that from him, so they have to be careful about how much they're planning to rely upon Matz if and when he should return. Liberatore is a toughie to grade. 4.15 ERA. I think he's been put through the ringer. He's had some really impressive moments and some where you're kind of scratching your head. All in all, I'm going to go C because I think if I did higher than a C, folks would be a little upset because they might be disappointed. Like Libby could have come in and either been able to establish himself as a legit leverage reliever by now or fight for a starter role and win it and perform consistently in it. We haven't seen either of those things, but his numbers are fine on the season. I just want to see a little bit better stuff more consistently. Libby at his best is impressive to see. We just don't get that version of him often enough relative to the frequency that he pitches with. Zach Thompson right now is on the 7-day IL in the minors. He's got a 9.5 ERA, started a couple of games for the Cardinals, pitched in relief a few times. It's been a failure of a season for Zach, and I had high hopes for him coming in. So I do have to give Zach an F. And even in AAA, the numbers have been kind of so-so. And now he's on the IL. So Graceffo, it's hard to grade him. I'll just give him a C because he's pitched just a couple of times, has held his own, and I'd like to see more of him. Helsley's an A for me. Now we're going to shift into the Cardinal relievers as we go down the board here. Let's do it by innings pitched, actually. But since I said Helsley first, he's not leading the relief corps in innings pitched, but I already said his name. It's an A, 2.36 ERA, 32 for 34 in save opportunities. Won the 2 games that he didn't convert to save. He's got 48 Ks in 42 innings. He's been able to lock down the 9th. There was a stretch of season where he really had no faith whatsoever in the fastball, didn't know where it was going, didn't have confidence in it, and just decided, okay, I'll wipe out dudes with my slider and start throwing the curve a little bit. Helsley's been dominant. He's been fantastic. He gets an A from me. Durable, too. And I love that he's not pitching over this All-Star break, didn't pitch in the game on Tuesday. I thought that was the right decision, whoever happened to have a hand in making it. So an A for Helsley from me. Andrew Kittredge and Ryan Fernandez are tied with the team lead of strict relief pitchers in innings pitched. They've both thrown 43 and a third innings. For Kittredge, it's a 3.53 ERA. He was so dominant in April. It's been a little bit tricky since then, but for the role that he's filling, I'm still willing to give him a pretty favorable grade. I'll go B for Kittredge, but I am alarmed a little bit at the recent performance, and so it's not going to be even a B+ for me, and it could end up going off the rails. Hopefully it doesn't. If he shows signs out of the break of still kind of not being as locked down as he was, Mo might need multiple right-handed relievers just to have him on hand, just in case, because it's been an element of this team that's been really good, the bullpen. But if it goes away all of a sudden and you don't have the strength that you thought you did, I don't see how the Cardinals necessarily are the team that they thought they were. The bullpen has been arguably its best unit. They're top 10 in ERA from the relievers, and they've really done a nice job keeping them in some games that they either didn't have business being in or it's low scoring and they're not going to win it without him. Those games have happened quite often, and Kittredge was a big part of what they were doing early. He needs to find that form again, but for now it's a B. Ryan Fernandez is an A+. I don't even hesitate to give it to him. A Rule 5 pick that to me is their best non-Helsley reliever at this point. 2.08 ERA. He's just been fantastic. 43 Ks in 43 innings. Same mark as Kittredge, by the way, on the strikeouts. He's just been awesome. So it's an A+ for me, and I don't even have to think about it. JoJo, I am going to give him the B+ and maybe even an A-. I'm going to go A-. 2.43 ERA from a reliever, and he's had some moments that haven't been as strong, but the numbers are the numbers. And he was real dominant at first, has fallen off the path a little bit, kind of like Kittredge, but not quite to the same extent, in my opinion. And I still do have faith in JoJo. So I think A- for me. JoJo's been a big part of the wins that they've gotten to this point. John King, man, he's another guy that I'll go A-. He gave up the one really tough bomb against the Dodgers to begin the season. Everybody kind of remembers that one. Spent some time in the minors, but since coming back, he's just freaking gone out and done his role. Another guy in the A range for me, John King, 2.43. Same ERA as JoJo. He's thrown 37 innings. Usage is getting up there for a lot of these relievers, but they've just had to do it, It's been the best part of the team. A from King. Kyle Leahy, man, my expectations were nil for him. After what we saw from him last year, I was kind of surprised to see him back. He's still trying to fight his way back onto the roster after serving as the 27th man on Saturday. But a 4.15 ERA, he's thrown 30 innings for this team, only 20 Ks, but, he's done a nice enough job. Leahy's a B+ for me. I've been pleasantly surprised by him. I don't think he's ever going to elevate into a leverage role, but that's okay. Not everybody has to. The role that he was asked to fill before Gallegos came back, he was doing a darn fine job of it. I almost think he might be better suited for that role than Gallegos, but Gallegos has the pedigree, and they're going to give him every opportunity. We'll see what happens if he has some rough moments, whether they might make a permanent switch there. But for now, yeah, it's going to be B+ for Leahy. Roycroft has already thrown 22 innings for the Cardinals. Kind of feels like he hasn't been around that much, but in 10 games, he's thrown, 18 games. He's finished 10 games. He's kind of been the guy that if you're down late or if you're up big late, he can finish a game for you. 3.63 ERA. I don't think he was on many people's radar to come into the season. And the FIP is even better than that at 3.34. So I'm going to give Roycroft a B+ as well. I think he's done a nice job. Kind of emerged out of nowhere, and they've needed him. Giovanni Gallegos is an F. It's been rough. I'm not going to expound upon that, but you guys have been watching the games, so you know what I mean. Nick Robertson had a little spell. I'll give him just a C-, but now I think he was injured and then came back and has really been struggling in Memphis after getting optioned. C- from Robertson, but you may not have heard the last from him. He does have 14 strikeouts in the 12 big league innings that he's thrown. Ryan Ludus barely participated, but I'll give him a B because he did well. Kloffenstein, it was fun at Rickwood. He gets an A because that was a tough 8th inning that he pitched. It's the only time they've given him a chance to pitch. And Riley O'Brien, I hesitate to even give a grade. Incomplete, but he's trying to work his way back. The one outing he had against the Dodgers when he struck out Shohei, but he also kind of looked, a little bit nervous. And also he was hurt. So I'm not even going to ding him for that. But I'm tantalized still by Riley O'Brien. He was my dude in spring that I was predicting to have a big season. And unfortunately, injury reasons, it hasn't worked out. Hopefully he's able to work back into the mix with some rehab stuff this weekend or early next week. That was the plan at last check. But those plans change when guys don't respond well to their work. So hopefully no setbacks for Riley. And it's an F for Tommy Edman. It's not his fault, man. But the fact that he's still only DHing lately in the minors and has not gotten up, it's a big old disappointment when they acted like it was not even going to hardly be a thing, this wrist surgery that he had. So it's not his fault. So I'm not really that's just not even tongue in cheek, but just hey, I just wanted to acknowledge that he's been disappointing because he's not played. They could use him, especially if he's going to put together some good ABs against lefty pitchers. But those are the players that I'm rating for the Cardinals this season so far. Midterm grades. Ollie Marmol, to me, man, people aren't going to love it, but I'll give him a B+. I think he's done a nice job, and I do think his bullpen management is among the best in the league. Cardinals fans won't agree with that, but we'll just agree to disagree because I've been describing in depth some of the moves and some of why I think he does a nice job managing. It's okay. You can be mad at me on that one if you want, but it's not going to change my mind. And Mo, man, I'm more of a C range for Mo right now, but his time is coming. His grade is going to be earned over the next 2 weeks because I do think it's incumbent upon him to do some deadline stuff. But he deserves credit for building a bullpen that I think has been very viable. It's a much better job in the offseason of bullpen construction than he had last year, no doubt about it. And granted, some of the guys that they thought would be competitive for him last year weren't, and now those same guys are around, guys like Kyle Leahy, and it's okay, now you're viable. So maybe Mo knew what he was doing with that guy just 1 year too early. And then guys like Roycroft coming up and kind of falling into their laps, and maybe they didn't think he was going to be a dude, but has been one so far. And even in AAA, you've got guys in relief that I think could be able to help this team in the second half. But in the offensive stuff, it's not really on Mo because I don't know what he really could have done realistically in the offseason to fix the offense. But now, it's incumbent upon him to maybe do some of that. And you could make the case that the knock against Mo and his grade for what he's done with the offense is just building a bench that's so redundant or doesn't have a lot of utility to it on a day-to-day basis. But they wanted Carpenter. They wanted Brandon Crawford. They had reasons for wanting those guys, and we're going to see those reasons play out. But I think it could have been a little bit more of an efficient bench than we did see. So I ding him a little bit for that. And honestly, with the rotation, I thought he did a nice job too. And he also didn't overreact to a lot of the public pressure where people wanted dudes fired. They wanted heads to roll. And Mo said, we're not going to do that. Granted, had they lost on Mother's Day, they might have. I'm not saying for sure. That's not via reporting. But everybody that covers the team started to kind of have the same vibe, uh-oh, what's going to happen here? And then they turn things around. But I'll credit Mo. I'll even give him a C+. Nope, I'm not going to back down to a C because for me, I think he should have been. And look, this is not something that I am able to take part in, so it might seem a little bit off color for me to criticize it. But from what I understand, he has not met with the media like he normally does in years past, first game of homestands. Has not had open media availability. He's available to media who have reached out to him and asked him for interviews and for, different things. I'd just be transparent. I haven't. If I truly needed something and had a question, I could reach out to him and ask it. But I think it is just a little disappointing that there hasn't been that media scrum. And that doesn't matter to most people. And like I said, maybe it's hypocritical for me to say it because I wouldn't be in the scrum if it happened, because I do a radio show at 4 o'clock every weekday, and I just am not able to be at the ballpark during the hours that would happen. So that part is what it is, but I think it is incumbent to be a little more front-facing and allow fans to see you out there and answering questions. But in fairness, like, he's done that with local media. He's been on Channel 5 and Channel 4. He's done different things with TV people. He's talked to Jim the Cat Hayes. So it's not that he's hiding in that sense, but hasn't taken that open forum scrum since opening day. And so that's, that would be maybe my mild criticism there. It's not the end-all be-all. You've probably heard me bring it up before. And, I think that's something that Mo would push back against, because he said, look, if anybody that wants to talk to me, I'm available. They know how to reach me. And that's 100% true. But I just think there is some value to that where, here's the updates. People don't have to come digging for it. Here's the health situation with all these guys that are on the IL. And that's just something that I think, being a little more public facing. And if they were winning more, do you wonder if he would do more of that kind of stuff? That's sort of, it was a tough start to the season, so it was kind of made sense to stay kind of out of the spotlight while things were turbulent. But I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking that part of it. And I would just want to make clear that it's not right now this grand criticism, because he's put together a team that, frankly, it's 4 games above 500. It's in a playoff spot, and the expectation should be to get the Cardinals and guide them back to the playoffs. And he's on the pace to do that. So I'm talking myself back and forth. I'll go C+, though, actually, for Mo, because I don't want to underrate what he did to turn around a pitching staff that was brutal last year. I mean, brutal. And he had to add 3 starters and tweak the bullpen to some significant level. And, they thought Keenan Middleton was going to be a dude for them, too. And he just happened to be hurt. So, C+ for Mo. I have ended up talking myself into it. But listen, if they don't make the playoffs, that's not going to be the same grade that I give them at the end of the year. So I think the next 2 weeks are very important for John Mozeliak. All right, I went over 50 minutes. I tried not to do it, but it happened anyway. Let me know your grades. Where did I miss the mark? Where are the Cardinals making or missing the mark? And what are your individual thoughts on some of these key players and key figures for the Cardinals through the first quote-unquote half of the season? It's not really half. But that's going to do it for this edition of B-Schaeff Daily. Appreciate you guys, as always, for listening. Make sure to subscribe before you get out of here, and we'll talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily. Peace.